there is a quiet danger in this world, one that does not shout, does not attack openly, but slowly, subtly enters your life and begins to reshape your thoughts, your emotions, and eventually your identity. Toxic manipulation rarely begins with something obvious or aggressive. It does not arrive loudly or forcefully. Instead, it enters your life quietly, almost invisibly, often disguised as kindness, care, or deep understanding. In the beginning, everything may feel natural, even comforting. The person may seem unusually attentive, supportive, and emotionally present. They listen closely. They validate your feelings, and they make you feel seen in ways that others may not have. This early phase builds a sense of trust, and more importantly, it lowers your guard, because nothing feels wrong at first. You do not question their behavior. You do not analyze their words. You simply accept the connection as something positive. This is where the subtlety of manipulation begins to take root. Instead of controlling you directly, they begin by creating emotional dependency. They position themselves as someone you can rely on, someone who understands you better than anyone else. Over time, this creates a quiet shift where their presence starts to feel necessary rather than optional. Gradually, small changes begin to appear, but they are so minor that they are easy to ignore. A slight comment that makes you second-guess yourself, a joke that feels a little too personal, a moment where they dismiss your feelings, but then quickly follow it with affection or reassurance. These contradictions create confusion, but not enough for you to fully recognize a pattern. Instead, you rationalize it. You tell yourself it's not a big deal, that everyone has flaws, that maybe you are overthinking. This is how subtle manipulation works. It does not push you away suddenly. It slowly reshapes your perception. It introduces doubt in very small doses, so small that you barely notice the shift happening inside you. What once felt clear begins to feel uncertain. Your confidence in your own thoughts weakens, and you begin to rely more on their perspective. At the same time, they may start influencing your decisions in indirect ways. They don't command you. They suggest, imply, or guide. They might question your choices in a way that sounds caring but plants seeds of insecurity. They may highlight your weaknesses while presenting themselves as someone who can help you improve. Over time, this creates a dynamic where you begin to seek their approval before making decisions, even if you are not fully aware of it. Because everything unfolds gradually, you remain emotionally invested. You remember the good moments, the kindness, the attention you received in the beginning. This makes it harder to recognize the manipulation for what it is. You compare the current discomfort with the past comfort, and you hold on, hoping things will return to how they once were. The subtle nature of toxic manipulation is what makes it so powerful. It doesn't force control. It earns it quietly, step by step, until you find yourself questioning not them, but yourself. One of the most powerful ways toxic people gain control is by slowly creating self-doubt within you. This does not happen all at once. It begins with small, almost unnoticeable moments where your thoughts, feelings, or reactions are subtly questioned. At first, it may seem harmless. They might say things like, "You're overthinking," or "You're too sensitive," in a tone that feels casual or even concerned. Because the delivery is gentle, you do not immediately see it as manipulation. Instead, you begin to question yourself. Over time, these small comments start to accumulate. Each one chips away at your confidence in your own perception. When something feels wrong to you, instead of trusting that feeling, you pause. You wonder if maybe they are right. Maybe you are overreacting. Maybe you misunderstood. This hesitation becomes the opening they need to deepen their influence. They may also contradict your experiences in subtle ways. If you express discomfort about something they said or did, they might deny it, minimize it, or reframe it entirely. They might tell you that it didn't happen the way you remember, or that you are interpreting it incorrectly. This creates confusion because your internal reality no longer feels stable. What you felt certain about just moments ago now feels uncertain. As this pattern continues, you begin to rely less on your own judgment and more on theirs. You start seeking validation before trusting your own thoughts. You might replay conversations in your mind, trying to figure out where you went wrong, even when nothing was actually wrong. This mental loop drains your energy and keeps you focused inward, questioning yourself instead of observing their behavior. At the same time, they may present themselves as the more rational or emotionally balanced person. They position their perspective as the correct one, while yours is framed as flawed or exaggerated. This imbalance creates a dynamic where you begin to feel like you need their guidance to think clearly or act appropriately. Without realizing it, you start giving them authority over your inner world. This erosion of self-trust affects more than just your interactions with them. It begins to influence how you see yourself in general. You may become more hesitant in your decisions, more cautious in expressing your feelings, and more dependent on external validation. Even simple choices can feel overwhelming because you no longer feel grounded in your own judgment. The most subtle part of this manipulation scene is that it feels like it is coming from within you. It does not feel like something being imposed on you. It feels like a flaw in your own thinking, and because of that, you try to fix yourself instead of questioning the source of the doubt. You become more accommodating, more careful, more willing to adjust, believing that if you just improve, everything will feel stable again. This is how toxic people maintain control. They do not need to dominate you openly when they can make you question yourself quietly. The more you doubt your own voice, the more space they have to shape your reality without resistance. Guilt and blame are the primary tools toxic people use to maintain control, and they use them with precision. Instead of taking responsibility for their actions, they shift the focus onto you. When something goes wrong, the conversation is quickly redirected until you find yourself explaining, defending, or even apologizing for something that was never your fault. This often begins with subtle statements that make you feel responsible for their emotions. They might say that your words hurt them, even when you spoke honestly and calmly. They may act disappointed or withdrawn, creating an emotional atmosphere that pressures you to fix what they are feeling. Because you care, you respond by trying to make things right, even if you don't fully understand what you did wrong. Over time, this pattern becomes more direct. They may accuse you of being selfish, careless, or insensitive whenever you express your needs. Instead of addressing the issue, they attach blame to your character. This makes the situation feel heavier, as if the problem is not just a single moment, but something fundamentally wrong with you. What makes this manipulation effective is repetition. The more often you are placed in the position of being at fault, the more natural it begins to feel. You start apologizing quickly, sometimes automatically, just to avoid conflict. You may even begin to anticipate their reactions and adjust your behavior in advance, trying to prevent blame before it happens. In this dynamic, guilt becomes a form of control. It keeps you focused on fixing, pleasing, and proving yourself, while they avoid accountability and maintain power over the situation. Toxic people rely heavily on your silence and your willingness to comply, because without it, their influence begins to weaken. They do not always demand obedience directly. Instead, they create an environment where speaking up feels uncomfortable, risky, or even pointless. This environment is carefully shaped over time through subtle reactions, emotional pressure, and repeated patterns that teach you one thing: it is easier to stay quiet than to express yourself. In the beginning, you may try to communicate openly. You may question something that feels unfair or express discomfort when a boundary is crossed, but the response you receive is rarely supportive or constructive. Instead, it may come in the form of defensiveness, irritation, or emotional withdrawal. They might turn the situation around, making it seem as though your concern is the real problem. In that moment, your attempt to be honest becomes something that creates tension rather than resolution. This a few times, you begin to hesitate. You start choosing your words more carefully, filtering your thoughts before speaking. You may even decide not to bring certain things up at all, telling yourself it is not worth the conflict. This is where silence begins to take hold. It does not feel like surrender. It feels like a practical choice to maintain peace. At the same time, compliance starts to develop quietly alongside that silence. You begin adjusting your behavior to avoid negative reactions. You may agree with things you do not fully support, go along with decisions that do not feel right, or suppress your own needs to keep the situation stable. Each small act of compliance reinforces the pattern, making it easier for them to continue their behavior without resistance. What makes this dynamic powerful is that it conditions you over time. You are not forced into silence. You are guided into it through repeated experiences that make speaking up feel ineffective or exhausting. Eventually, you may stop expecting change altogether. You accept the dynamic as it is and focus your energy on adapting to it rather than challenging it. This silence benefits them because it removes accountability. Without your voice, their actions go unchallenged. Without your resistance, their influence remains steady. They do not need to control you directly when your own hesitation does the work for them. Your silence becomes the space where their behavior continues unchecked, and your compliance becomes the structure that supports it. As this pattern deepens, it can extend beyond that one relationship. You may find yourself becoming quieter in other areas of your life, less willing to express your thoughts, and more inclined to avoid conflict even when it is necessary. The habit of staying silent begins to feel normal, even though it slowly disconnects you from your own voice and your own sense of self. Awareness is the point where manipulation begins to lose its power. It starts with a simple shift in how you observe your experiences. Instead of immediately reacting or blaming yourself, you begin to notice patterns. You pay attention to how certain interactions make you feel, how often you are left confused, and how frequently you question your own thoughts after dealing with that person. How often this awareness does not come from overanalyzing every detail, but from quietly recognizing repetition. you start seeing that the same situations keep happening, the same emotions keep surfacing, and the same doubts keep returning. What once felt like isolated incidents begins to form a clear pattern. As you become more aware, you create a small distance between yourself and their influence. You no longer absorb everything they say as truth. Instead, you pause, reflect, and evaluate. This pause is powerful because it interrupts the automatic cycle of reaction and self-doubt. With awareness, your perspective begins to shift. You stop focusing only on your own reactions and start observing their behavior more objectively. This clarity allows you to see what is actually happening, rather than what you were led to believe. And when you finally see clearly, something within you becomes still. You stop chasing explanations. You stop trying to fix what was never yours to fix. You stop carrying the weight of someone else's behaviors. There is a quiet strength that rises when you no longer need their validation. A calm confidence that does not need to argue, does not need to prove, does not need to be understood by those who never intended to understand you. You begin to return to yourself, to your voice, to your clarity, to your peace. And in that space, you realize something that changes everything. Your energy is valuable. Your mind is worth protecting. Your peace is not negotiable. So you choose differently. You choose distance over drama. You choose silence over unnecessary conflict. You choose yourself over the need to be accepted. And as you step away without anger, without noise, without explanation, you feel lighter. Because the moment you stop allowing manipulation is the moment you reclaim your power.